Sure. Well, then let's get started. Good afternoon to all of you. As Mike mentioned, my name is Peter Romeo, and it's my privilege to be the moderator of this panel discussion. My day job is serving as editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business Magazine. This is a publication for the people. Oh, I think I'll about that. So my publication is called Restaurant Business Magazine, and it's a journal for the owners and operators of restaurants, high-volume restaurants. So it's the Aquavits and the Red Roosters of the world. Sure, they're part of our readership, but the overwhelming, the bulk of our readership are the mainstream, high-volume chain feeders, because they're the ones who feed more of America than the Aquavits, the Red Roosters, and all those combined. They're really the ones who are America's kitchens, whereas those other restaurants that you associate with sustainability are more the holiday dinner, so to speak. So this covers a swathe from fast food through casual dining, places like TGI Fridays, Chili's, and on up to Del Frisco's and places like that. And these are not folks that you'd normally associate with being sustainable. Well, the reality is they have really made an effort to become more sustainable in the last decade or so, mostly in regard to things like the physical plant, the operations, packaging, things like that. Food really hasn't been a big part of that effort to become more sustainable until recently. And let me give you an example of what I mean. 2 weeks ago, McDonald's reported a disastrous financial quarter, a really bad performance for their most recent quarter. And the CEO, Don Thompson, was asked, well, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to right the ship? And he said, well, one of the things we're looking at is organics. Now, this is McDonald's, and they're talking about organics. And financial analyst said, well, have you thought about, as an intermediary step, maybe looking at grass-fed beef? And he said, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we're doing it. We're doing it in some places, some of our international markets, and we're looking at that too. So that kind of puts it in perspective how far we are going. And we're going to talk today about how there's this evolution, this revolution to eat more sustainably. And we've got a variety of perspectives, eat and drink sustainably. We've got a variety of perspectives up here in the panel. So without further ado, let me ask them to introduce themselves, talk about the organizations they're from, and how important sustainability is within, or promoting sustainability is within those organizations. Steve?
Yeah, I'm Steve Hindy. I'm founder of Brooklyn Brewery, which is, I hope some of you know about our company here in Brooklyn, and actually we do extremely well in Sweden as well. It's our second biggest market after New York. And sustainability, I would say, is a challenge for a brewer because our ingredients for different beers come from literally all over the world. And we're dealing with an economic model that was really built for the large breweries that dominated the industry for so many years. Companies like mine have only begun to flourish in the last 3 decades. So I feel like we're at the beginning of rebuilding the kind of agricultural assets that you need to produce a truly local beer. Actually, the beer I have here today is called Brooklyn Green Market Wheat. And we do this in collaboration with Grow NYC, the company that runs the farmers markets in New York City, 53 farmers markets. And this beer is made with 70% wheat grown in New York State. The barley in the beer is from Massachusetts. It's malted in Massachusetts. And the hops actually are grown on the farm of one of our brewmasters who lives in upstate New York. it's a truly local beer. And to be honest, it's actually kind of difficult to sell because New York, Miami, LA, I think Stockholm are international cities, and restaurants and bars typically are looking for the best. They don't care where it comes from. We're at the beginning of marketing truly local beer, and I think it's going to take a while.
Okay. Kaitlin?
Yeah, I'm Kaitlin Yarnall, and is my mic on? Your mic's on?
I'm not sure. That's
All right, I'm Kaitlin Yarnall, and I work for National Geographic, and I'm the director of our Future of Food initiative. And this is an initiative that was started in the magazine. We launched this May, and we see food as a continuation in a dialogue with our readers. So we cover issues such as fresh water, population, cities. These are all energy. These are all series and special issues we've done in the past. So we're now turning to food, and we've loved this series so much. Our readers have responded, and our partners have responded, and we're going to make it a 5-year initiative for the society. We're a nonprofit, so that means that we'll be covering it through the publishing side of our house, but also in the grant making and exploration side of the company. We look at things this year. We looked at feeding 9 billion by 2050, taking a more of a food security angle. We've looked at aquaculture and the food insecure in the United States, and land grabbing in Africa, and the science of GMOs. So we really are trying to cover the whole food system through a sustainable lens, and really trying to crack that nut of how to feed 9 billion people and still protect the planet.
okay. Kara?
I'm Kara Rubin. I oversee the grocery business for the Northeast region of Whole Foods Market, which is 30 stores out of approximately just shy of 400 for the whole company around the country, Canada and the UK. As far as sustainability goes for Whole Foods, it's really at the core of pretty much everything we do, from designing our stores all the way through to the bags that we put the groceries into at the end of each transaction, and everything in between. And from my perspective, in the context of my job, that involves, in large part, considerations around the products that we carry. I oversee purchasing decisions for those 30 stores in basically the New York metro area. But we're also considering, taking into account operational issues on a store level as well. So it really does inform pretty much everything that we do on a daily basis, thinking about sourcing, how products are sourced, where they're grown, who's growing them, who's packaging them, and how they're getting to our shelves ultimately.
Okay. When you talk about eating sustainably, certainly in the restaurant industry, one of the first aspects that comes to light, or one of the first questions that's posed is, well, what about supply? And quick on the heels is, what about demand? And that the conventional mindset seems to be that there's not enough demand to trigger sufficient supply to satisfy that demand and sort of teach the rest of the consumer world to popularize the notion. In other words, it's sort of a catch-22. There's not enough people who want to eat sustainably to promote enough agriculture to grow sustainably, and as a result, it seems to remain on the niches. What do you guys think about that? Do you see a gap between, where do you think the demand for eating sustainably or drinking sustainably is now, and is there enough demand, and where are we in that catch-22? Is that gap closing at all?
You put your finger on the real problem, which is demand for these products. Actually, Whole Foods has had a tremendous impact on the grocery business with their very principled approach to the suppliers that they use and the products they sell. I don't know any small food producer or processor who won't say that the first great customer they had was Whole Foods. Whole Foods is very open to these new companies coming up. And you're seeing other big grocery chains begin to change the way they approach the products they're selling, looking for more sustainable things. But it really is a struggle. This product, the green market wheat, part of the proceeds from the sale goes to support the green markets. And we launched it last year with a champagne bottle, a big bottle, which we only sold at the markets, at the green markets. And honestly, it wasn't until we put some really good salespeople in the markets to talk about these products that we began to sell significant volume of them. And that was the reason we went to a 12-ounce bottle, which is much more accessible, much more what customers want. And we're hoping that this is going to grow, that we're going to be able to order more grain from these local growers who weren't growing wheat for breweries. I mean, they haven't done that in decades. It's a whole new market for them. So it's very exciting for them, but it's going to take time, I think, before people go to the market and look at the labels of the beers they're buying and saying, well, I want an organic beer, or I want a beer that's produced with local products. I think it's we've got our work cut out for us.
Does this product cost the same to produce as one where you didn't use local ingredients?
No, it costs more. And that's an issue, so the price is a bit higher. That could change if we reached a certain scale down on the farm, but that's going to take a while.
Kaitlin, let me give you a little twist on this. You talked about the series that you're doing and the coverage that you're doing, and a lot of it seems where the overriding concern is just getting enough food. Mm-hmm. Can sustainability really be a sensibility in that regard when you're talking about starvation versus food?
Well, I think it's all relative, right? I think it depends totally on the audience and who you're trying to feed. I do think that there's ways to increase food security, particularly if we look at the U.S. example and do that sustainably. There's the issue of food loss and food waste is huge. There's a lot of perfectly good, nutritious calories that are wasted in this country and in Western Europe that could really go towards, food security. But I think, the dialogue around food security is changing too, because it's not just about getting enough calories to people. It's about getting the right calories and getting the nutritious calories to people. And some of that may involve, sustainable, locally produced food. And that comes back to a policy question of what type of calories are we providing to people who are in need, and can they be grown in their environment, and can we not just, when we look at food aid, can we not just deliver calories, even if they are nutritious, but can we develop systems, agricultural systems in the places where food is needed, where those nutritious calories can be given to food insecure communities, but set up systems so that they're growing it and giving it themselves.
Okay. Kara, what do you see in the way of sustainability as a driver for your business and what your customers want?
Well, like I said, it's really at the core of everything that we do. The thought process around whether or not products are sustainable. And I think, frankly, I've been with Whole Foods for a little over 8 years at this point. The company's over 30 years old. And just the fact that we are seeing ever more and ever more aggressive levels of competition in our niche speaks to the fact that, and frankly, just the fact that the CEO of McDonald's would have organics and grass-fed products on his radar screen speaks to the fact that I think the conversation certainly is a prominent one. And we see it, we've seen it for a long time. It's the reason why Whole Foods has grown to the extent it has, and the company has plans to grow exponentially over the coming years, because we have the business momentum to justify that. And I think, you know, we're fortunate in a certain respect that you know, we're, you know, as you mentioned, that there's a certain amount of concern about sustainability being a niche. We certainly speak to the people who are represented by that niche, but I think our audience is getting broader and broader. And if you look at the millennial generation and things that are important to folks in that age bracket, sustainability, social responsibility, social consciousness, conscious capitalism, things like terminology and notions like this are more than just theoretical. They want to know where their products are coming from, where their food products are coming from. They'll make decisions based on, purchasing decisions based on that kind of information. And we're seeing it, the growth in not only organics within our markets, you know, the focus that Whole Foods has brought to the conversation around non-GMOs and transparency, at least around non-GMO products, you know, even to taking the conversation to another level and starting to talk about biodynamics as well. There are a number of different kinds of biodynamic products that we're starting to carry, and our rating systems. We've had seafood and meat rating systems in place for a while. We just launched a responsibly grown rating system for our produce department. We have an eco-scale rating system for cleaning products in my department. These are all means by which Whole Foods as a company has taken steps to educate our customers and give our customers more information on which to base their purchasing decisions. And from that comes the demand that I think the greater marketplace is looking for. So you know, to a certain extent, I think Whole Foods is remains on the vanguard, has always been on the vanguard and remains there. But there are more and more people coming into that space, which, even though it, you know, maybe causes me some headaches on a day-to-day basis from having to think about our competition, it is heartening to me as a citizen of the world to know that, you know, there is more and more demand for these kinds of products out there, which means that ultimately, if you're a capitalist, you believe that there is going to be more demand for beer like this, and Steve will be able to continue making more and more of it, and that has a whole trickle-down effect.
You got to love Whole Foods. I love when I buy carrot juice and it says ingredients, carrot, instead of like 20 different chemicals that mean it'll last for a month instead of a couple of days.
And that's absolutely a conversation. When, you know, if I used to do the buying myself. I have folks on my team who are doing it now. You sit in on those conversations that the folks on my buying team are having with vendors who come in. If you come to us with a carrot juice that has carrageenan and fillers and dextrose and whatever other more unpronounceable kinds of ingredients, first and foremost, as you may or may not know, we have some baseline quality standards that are non-negotiable. We don't carry products that have artificial flavors, colors, sweeteners. All our dairy products are hormone and antibiotic free, and so on and so forth. It gets more complicated the more detailed you get. But we are looking for products that have the simplest, most straightforward kinds of ingredients, ingredient panels, certainly in my department, but across the board, from beer to chocolate cake and everything in between.
If you need more convincing that sustainability is catching on with the mainstream, check out a 7-Eleven test store, and you'll look at the sandwiches and you'll see that there'll be 4 ingredients. Clean labeling. This is 7-Eleven. This is the ultimate grab and go, sustain yourself, just cram in the calories. And they're limiting it to 4 simple ingredients. A chain called Jason's Deli, a restaurant chain. If they can't pronounce the ingredient, they won't use it. That's a criteria. But let me ask you, Kara, how far out there is Whole Foods willing to go in this sort of educational level or this educational role in cultivating that demand? I mean, it sounds as if it's a fine line between satisfying pent-up demand and sort of leading tastes.
Pretty far, frankly. Just the fact that we have standards that we champion and define. For us, it's all about transparency, and again, we have a series of baseline quality standards that are below which we won't go. But everything, assuming you meet those baseline quality standards when you come to us with a product for items that we carry on our shelves, I feel like my role in my job is to offer the broadest assortment of products to our customer base based on the demand that we see from a variety of different perspectives. From an economic one, so we have all of our private label products are meant to be a value level option for our customers, and we have mid-tier and premium tier products as well. So there's really an assortment to choose from, and that same sort of tiering could apply to the kinds of attributes that those products also offer in the way of conventional all the way up to, like I said, biodynamic and everything in between. So, some people are surprised to learn that Whole Foods does carry products that may contain GMOs. That it's true, and it's very, very hard to avoid, as most of you probably are aware these days. But we also offer many products that are verified non-GMO by the Non-GMO Project. We offer a very, very broad assortment of organic products across the board throughout the store. So it's really offering customers those options and identifying where they are, what they mean, and educating in that manner.
Peter, I think Whole Foods even kind of makes the argument that there's greater demand for sustainable products than there is availability. They opened up in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, and it's incredible the hordes of people who come to that market day in, day out. In a way, it's a big system that we're battling, I think, to get attention from the agribusinesses to the big restaurant chains. Whole Foods is having a tremendous influence, I think, on that. But it's still a struggle.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now,
I think if I can just add one thing too, beyond the fact that we have a very successful store in Brooklyn, that's absolutely true, and we're grateful for the community. We've also opened stores in places like downtown Detroit and a neighborhood in New Orleans that was very severely affected by Hurricane Sandy. And these stores both of those locations have been tremendously successful, exceeding the expectations of our internal targets. And I think that speaks to the full range of the extent of the demand, I guess, out there. It's not necessarily a trend that is specific to one demographic niche, as it were. There's what can be more fundamental than wanting to eat well?
so it's not, the sort of the conventional wisdom is that there's an income bias to this, that this is something for wealthier urban individuals. It sounds like that doesn't.
We haven't seen that. I'm not intimately involved in the store in Detroit. That's a region that's separate from mine. But from what I understand, the community there has fully and very openly embraced that store. There's a huge effort to work with local vendors across the entire company. All of our stores, as Steve knows, all of our stores are empowered to make decisions around local products and bringing in local products. Again, as long as they meet those baseline quality standards, they're empowered to do that. We have people whose jobs, their full-time job is to find and facilitate the cultivation of local products in our stores in each of our regions, and that's not it's not any different in a store like the one in downtown Detroit. and that store has been, like I said, hugely successful since it opened, I think, about a year ago.
Steve, do you see an age bias? Do you see younger people being more readily embracing of a product like that?
Absolutely. Younger people are much more tuned in to sustainable practices and products. After the 2003 blackout in New York, we started buying all our electricity from windmills in upstate New York. And we didn't make a big deal of it. We did some coasters that we explained where the electricity was coming from. And there were a few articles in the press about it, but we got tremendous reaction from young consumers across the board through email, through our website, and just people coming to the brewery and thanking us for this. It had a tremendous effect. It costs more money to buy electricity from windmills, but I think it had a very positive effect on our relationship with our customers. And people who tour the brewery also get a kick out of the fact that in the middle of the night, every night, a dump truck shows up at the brewery, and it picks up all the spent grain from the processes of the previous day. And the grain is sold to farmers in New Jersey, and it's incredibly high quality feed for livestock, for cows and pigs. They say when the brewery truck comes into the barnyard, the pigs charge the fences. It's like happy hour down on the farm. And actually, breweries have been doing that for centuries. That's not a new part of what we do, but it certainly rings a bell with our customers.
One quick question, then we're going to go to you, Kaitlin, to talk about some issues on the supply side. But is there a danger in crowing about your efforts to be more sustainable or help people to eat and drink more sustainable?
It's very tricky because there are a lot of fanatical sustainability wonks out there. And if you get too noisy about your practices, they'll descend on you and start picking apart other parts of your supply chain. And so we do not tout ourselves as a 100% sustainable brewery because I'm sure Kaitlin can tell us about how difficult critics can be of the way you're handling your products and sourcing ingredients for different things.
Yeah, I'd agree. Although I feel like it's a complex world that we live in, and it's impossible to I think please those who or achieve the expectations of those who have very sort of purist understanding of what it means to be sustainable, and also, like I was describing before, meet our need to really provide as many options for our customers as possible, because we feel like that's our primary responsibility to provide those options and let our customers decide. Again, the fact that we have biodynamic products on our shelves is, I think, one step in the direction of that purist ideology. But I would say first of all, it's impossible to fully stock a chain like Whole Foods even with 100% organic products. The supply chains, the distribution networks, it's not possible, nor would it make for a good and broad business model, frankly, in my opinion. That said, I think it's those people who are having those conversations, who are driving those conversations, who are necessary to be part of that educational discussion, the larger global discussion around what's necessary to support the well-being of our planet and the well-being of the 9 billion people who will need to use the resources we have left to sustain ourselves.
Kaitlin, we've been talking about demand. Talk to us a little about what you saw on the supply side in terms of means of production or means of distribution that help people eat sustainably.
Sure. You know, like most things, the more we've dug into this food issue, the more we've discovered just how complex the system is, really. And so to describe, you know, what is the food supply chain on a global perspective is virtually impossible. I think that, you know, one of the things I have definitely learned in this series is that there's not one right solution. There's not one right answer in terms of providing sustainable agriculture and supply for our growing population. In one of our articles, our author uses this phrase, there's not a silver bullet, there's silver buckshot. And I really like that idea, because for some areas it may be it's a locally sourced food. That makes sense if you live in a place that has good agricultural land and distribution systems. Some places that don't have that, we look at food deserts in our series, we need to figure out a way to get food into those areas, and there may not be a way to produce food locally in those areas right now. We could work to that. We're looking at solutions such as vertical farming that could potentially bring food closer to the consumer. But then when we also look at the world, when we step out of the developed world into the developing world, to say that people who do not have enough calories must eat organically or must eat locally when they're struggling with A, just getting enough calories, and B, getting nutritious calories, would maybe mean denying them, you know, micronutrient fortified food, which in many cases, that's what the Green Revolution brought us. It's, you know, how we've fought against many diseases, and many, you know, parts of the world are still struggling with iodine deficiencies, for instance. And to say that you can only give locally sourced food to those populations may mean that you're subjecting them to a life of crippling diseases because of micronutrients that aren't available in that area.
Sure. I know it must be tough to generalize, but when you see these solutions, where were these ideas hatched? Was it some gifted individual, some entrepreneurial type? Did they come down from academia, government fostered? What's sort of the nurturing factor in there?
You're not going to like my answer, but I think it's all of the above. I think that you could pick many examples and see. I think the Green Revolution, the one we're all familiar with, is interesting because a lot of that was publicly funded, right? That came from the US and some European countries in putting public money behind ag research. That's one of the cries for many in the agricultural world right now is to fund publicly fund agricultural research for solutions. Now that's, you know, when you talk about a broad base getting calories to millions of people and increasing nutrient dense foods in that sense. But then we look at very local solutions in terms of vertical farming. I just mentioned there's many companies playing with this. There's a group out of MIT that's looking at vertical farming solutions with test farms in Detroit and in Senegal and India. I think that's interesting, where it's academia not necessarily providing the research, but providing the housing and the framework for the research to happen. And then I think there's a lot that comes out of intergovernmental agencies. We're working closely with the FAO, the branch of the UN that does food and agriculture, and they are promoting a lot of programs around, for instance, no-till agriculture. So how do you, in the tropics, grow food without tilling the land? Or pollinators, when we look at how do you increase the population of natural pollinators so that we don't have to rely on managed populations of honeybees. Those solutions are really indigenous solutions that have been practiced for millions of years thousands of years in these areas, but they've been lost. And so oftentimes it takes an intergovernmental agency to come in and give permission and tools to reclaim those practices.
And similar question for you, Kara, and then we're going to open it up to questions. I've been asking all the questions and want to give you guys a chance, but one quick question for you, Kara. New products. Typically, does someone come to you with a product, or do you push it down? Is it both of the above?
Both. But I think one of the most important things that Whole Foods does offer, like Steve mentioned, is that window of opportunity for very small vendors to work even with a single store to get their product off the ground. I don't know if any of y'all had a chance to try the Siggy's yogurt that's out on the table in the hallway. Siggy's a classic example. There is a Siggy. Some of you might, I believe he was at the gala last night, so some of you might know him. He launched in our region probably about 7 or 8 years ago in a couple stores, and I think actually just in the Chelsea store. And he's now in virtually all of our stores across the country. So he's a classic case of a success story, growing a small brand that has a unique story, one that we appreciate on a variety of levels. He's supporting local upstate New York farmers. All of his dairy that he uses is from New York State. He's producing here in New York State. His product is also one that's differentiated on the shelves compared to the other yogurts that we carry, but certainly to the broader yogurt category in the conventional mass channels, in that the sugar content of his product is significantly lower. And when you think about sustainability from a dietary perspective, and getting into conversation around obesity and that kind of thing, sugar consumption is part of one of the primary issues driving the obesity epidemic, certainly in this country. And having products like his out there that provide an alternative, and one that frankly I think is delicious, and much more so than any highly sugared up yogurt product out there. Getting people to transition to products like that is I think one part of a very complex process.
Okay, well, I wanted to give the audience a chance to pose any questions if there are any out there. It's a little tough to see, but raise your hand if there's a question.
Hi, my name is Mia. Thank you for the talk so far. I was just wondering, I have grown up learning that local grown food is a good thing. This is what we've been talking about all day. But does local necessarily mean good? Anyway, would you say that it's better to skip the transportation, or to go for say, organic food, for example?
I think that's that depends on individual choice, frankly. I think that's what it comes down to. If you as an individual decide that eating organically is a priority for you, then having those options available is something that, from my perspective, from my company's perspective, is one that we want to try and support. Similarly for local. So from a sustainability, again, I'm not an expert on tallying up the dollars associated with moving product around the world, and the overall extenuating costs related to transporting products from great distances. But again, offering those options, I think, is really important, and letting the marketplace decide, an educated marketplace decide, and for us, participating in that process of educating is equally important as it is to actually provide those options.
And I think it depends on how do you define good, right? And that's what Kara's saying, is depends on what's good for you. And if you want to look at it through a economic lens, or do you want to look at it through an environmental lens? And even if you want to look at it through an environmental lens, do you want to look at it through a pesticide soil health lens, or do you want to look at it at a fossil fuel lens, or water? I think it's complex, and so each person has to decide, what they are going to focus on more intently, or is it a combination? And I think that's how most of us make our choices, right? You don't choose just based on one indicator.
Yeah, I think local is one of the attributes that people will take into consideration when they judge a product. This beer is local. It's got to be really good beer. It's got to stand up to the other wheat beers on the shelf, or it's not going to succeed, I think. Just being local is not enough.
One thing that we face too is that, as fabulous as I haven't had a chance to try it, but as fabulous as I'm sure the green market wheat beer is, from our perspective internally at Whole Foods, there might be a company similar to Brooklyn Brewery in another part of the country that's brewing a similar product that's local in that area. And Whole Foods has a loan program where we offer low interest loans to local suppliers for certain kinds of projects that they need to accomplish in order to grow their business, and we partner with them in that way. And there's an effort internally to make sure that those products have a chance to expand throughout our stores in other regions. But we're bumping up against a situation, and it's a good problem to have, where we have a lot of very successful brands that have grown up through a single region and are getting to the point where they're able to expand to other regions. But we already have Brooklyn Brewery and a lot of really awesome local pasta sauces and granolas and people who've developed these brands here. So now we're bumping up against a situation where we want to support those local brands from afar, which aren't local to us here. We also want to support our local brands, and how do we do that? So it's a similar kind of deliberation internally on a Whole Foods corporate level. I would say, just to come back to that personal decision, I think, to me, it's all about simplicity. And, if you're, it might be thinking about buying raspberries that are grown in Argentina in the winter versus not buying them because they're not local, or that's a little bit of a different thought process than something that's more processed, a food product that's more processed. But when it comes down to eating and the choices that we make, again, keeping it simple and cooking at home. They talked about that on the earlier panel. I think that, learning to cook some really basic kinds of food and supporting yourself and your family that way is probably the most important first step. And then from there, learning from that about letting those decisions around, foods that are important to you, what you like, what you enjoy, what your family enjoys, letting those kinds of considerations then inform the purchasing decisions that you make when you're standing in front of, many aisles worth of products from various parts of the world, including things that are right nearby.
Sure. Was there another question over here?
One more question, please.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm originally a dietitian. And thank you very much for a really good discussion on a very important topic so far. My question is regarding this topic, how we're going to eat sustainably. Obviously, we all know that just by simply reducing our meat consumption would be beneficial for the environment. And we talked a lot about fish and eating local and all of that. But I'm thinking, how can we inspire and encourage the general population to eat less meat, and especially buy, for example, grass-fed beef, as we talked about before. And me myself, I'm a big fan of Whole Foods, of course. But I can understand that some people think it's quite expensive to buy broccoli, and that's what they say. It's if we can buy chicken for the same price, we'd rather buy chicken. And yeah, what else can we do to inspire people to eat more vegetables, and they can eat meat, but maybe not as much today? Do you understand what I mean?
you would not believe the number of programs that are in evidence in effect at colleges now, basically to do exactly that. Now, part of it is to address the needs of their population. They want more vegetarian, they want to be more flexitarian. But part of it is economics. Because beef is so expensive, or all proteins are so expensive. So Meatless Mondays is probably the most, the best known program, where every Monday there's at least an offer of a vegetarian entree, if not all vegetarian entrees, but there are any number of variations on that theme of basically, try this, it's meatless. You guys have any examples in that regard?
I would say go buy this month's, a copy of this month's issue of National Geographic magazine, shameless plug, where our feature story, we have a feature story on meat. And it talks about that very thing, and not from an economic perspective, though, like I said before, from a resource perspective of how much water and fossil fuel and grain that could be feeding people go into producing meat. So it looks at it not from a nutritional or economic perspective, but from a resource perspective. But then it doesn't say, we're not going to stop eating meat. If you're going to eat meat, here's how to do it.
I believe we're out of time, but please join me in thanking the panel, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.